All right, so today we're diving into a whole bunch of headlines from India, all from March 15th, 2025.
A ton of stuff going on.
Yeah, a real mix. And trying to kind of get a sense of, okay, what is happening over there right now? Like, what are the big trends? What are people talking about?
I think it's really interesting to look at, from our viewpoint, kind of outside looking in and seeing how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah, I mean, I love that we've got a mix here. We have some, like, international relations stuff, bit of cultural stuff, of course.
Yeah.
Some serious legal things happening in India, and some positive stuff as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll start with some of this international news. India and Pakistan. A relationship that has its ups and downs.
For sure. True.
Often more downs than ups.
Yeah.
But we see this headline, India really going after Pakistan at the UN during this, meeting about Islamophobia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's not just, the usual back and forth between the two countries. This feels a bit more pointed. This is Parvateni Harish, who's representing India, and he's, accusing Pakistan of having a fanatical mindset when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir and pointing to their record of bigotry.
It's very strong language for the UN, I think, too. It's not very diplomatic in a way.
Yeah, it feels like a real shift in tone, right?
Yes.
And then India doesn't stop there.
Right.
Right. They then go on to say, well, hold on, you're accusing us of sponsoring terrorism.
Yeah.
But actually, Pakistan are the epicenter of global terrorism.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So this is all happening after Pakistan had made these accusations that India was supporting terror activities, but they didn't link it to the train attack that had recently happened in Balochistan. So that's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really difficult to unpack all the different layers of this conflict. And, I don't know enough about the history. But just from, an outsider's perspective, it feels like there's this constant tension between these two countries, and they're both trying to control the narrative on the international stage.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting how they're using these platforms like the UN to really push their own agendas.
Yeah, and I think this incident at the UN really highlights that it feels like things are getting a bit more heated.
For sure.
And it makes you wonder, is this a new tactic by India, or is this just, another escalation in a long line of escalation?
That's the big question.
Right. Well, let's move from this, quite tense international situation to something a bit more celebratory.
Yes, please.
Which is the festival of Holi.
Oh, Holi. Yeah.
Which is being celebrated across South Asia and beyond, and even, here.
Across the world.
Yeah, we see it across the world now.
Yeah.
And I always just think of the vibrancy of this festival.
The color.
It's just so visual, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The colors, the powders, the water, and the white clothes that everyone wears.
And it's not just the colors, though, right?
Of course.
It's all the symbolism behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a celebration of good over evil.
Right.
The end of winter, the beginning of spring.
Yeah, the renewal.
Renewal, yeah, and love as well.
Yeah, the love of Krishna and Radha.
Yes, exactly.
Which is, such a key part of the Hindu tradition.
Yeah, and I think, what's so fascinating about Holi is that even though it's this ancient festival, the traditions are still so alive today.
Yeah. It's not just a religious thing either, right?
Yep.
It's a cultural thing. It's something that brings people together.
Absolutely.
And you see people of all ages, all backgrounds, all faiths out on the streets celebrating.
Yeah. I mean, you can't help but smile when you see people covered in color and throwing water balloons at each other.
Yeah. And those water guns have become so popular now.
I know, right? It's like a full-on water fight.
Yeah. And then you have, the food and the drink that are associated with Holi.
Yeah, the thondai.
Thondai is so good.
So good. I love the gujia as well.
Yeah. And even Bang, which is, associated with Lord Shiva, is part of some celebrations.
It's a very interesting festival. There's so much to it.
And it varies so much from region to region as well.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned the marigold petals that are used in some areas.
Yeah.
Bonfires the night before, which symbolize, this burning away of negativity.
Yes, cleansing.
And then you have things like Lathmar Holi, where women
That's the best one.
hit men with sticks.
I know, it's so funny. It's like a role reversal kind of thing.
It's so interesting how this one festival can be celebrated in so many different ways.
And it really speaks to the diversity of India, right? There's
Yeah.
so many different cultures and traditions within this one country, and Holi kind of brings them all together.
Yeah, it really does.
But it makes you think, as the world becomes more globalized, do these traditions stay the same or do they start to change?
Yeah. What's that influence?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we have to move to something a bit more serious now,
Okay.
which is a headline from Madhya Pradesh, where the chief minister is proposing the death penalty for religious conversions.
Oh, wow.
So this is a big deal, right?
That's a huge statement.
Yeah, it's a very serious proposal.
Yeah. What are the details of this?
So it's an amendment to the Madhya Pradesh Freedom of Religion Act.
Right.
And you can imagine it's already causing a lot of controversy.
Of course.
Activists, Christian leaders, civil society groups, they're all saying this is a violation of fundamental rights.
Right.
Particularly Article 25 of the Indian Constitution, which guarantees freedom of religion.
Right. Freedom to practice and propagate your religion.
And we even have a quote here from Father Cedric Prakash, who says this is an attack on fundamental rights and a divisive political strategy aimed at minorities.
Wow. So it's very targeted.
It feels very targeted.
Yeah.
And to add to this concern, the United Christian Forum has reported that crimes against Christians in Madhya Pradesh have gone up dramatically.
Really?
From 127 cases in 2014 to 834 in 2024.
That's a huge increase.
A huge increase.
Wow.
And a lot of these incidents involve accusations of forced conversion.
Okay.
So you have this backdrop of increasing violence against Christians, and then this really harsh legal proposal.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to see a connection there.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's important to note that the Christian population in Madhya Pradesh is very small. It's less than 0.5% of the total population.
So it feels like they're really being targeted.
It does feel very targeted.
Yeah.
And activists are already saying they're going to challenge this legally.
Right.
So this is definitely something that's going to continue to develop.
Keep an eye on.
Yeah, keep an eye on for sure. Let's move to the world of business. Now we have news of a major investment by Tata Sons in Tata Projects.
I always get those two mixed up.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Tata Sons Tata Projects.
So this is a 1,432 crore rupee investment through a rights issue.
Okay.
And they're aiming to raise a total of 2,500 crore rupees.
So can you just remind me what a rights issue is again?
Yeah, so basically it's when a company offers its existing shareholders the chance to buy more shares.
Right.
At a discounted price. And so in this case, Tata Sons, which is, the holding company.
Right, the parent company.
The parent company, of the Tata Group, is investing in Tata Projects, which is their engineering and construction arm.
Okay, so they're putting money back into their own company.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this comes just a few months after Ratan Tata passed away.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it kind of feels like a new era for the Tata Group.
Right, a new chapter.
And they're saying this investment is to strengthen Tata Projects' financial position.
Makes sense.
And they might even list the company on the stock market after this.
Okay, interesting.
Now, according to CRISIL, which is a credit rating agency, Tata Projects is actually in pretty good shape financially.
Okay.
They have a healthy cash balance, they're expecting good cash flow this year, and they have access to unused credit lines.
Right, so it's not like they're in trouble or anything.
No, it doesn't seem like a bailout or anything. It feels more like a strategic move to fuel growth.
Yeah, what sectors are they looking at?
Well, given that India is really focusing on infrastructure development right now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Things like transport, energy, urban development.
Yeah.
It's likely that Tata Projects is going to be involved in a lot of these big projects.
Okay.
And it's worth noting that Tata Sons is funding this investment through dividends that they get from Tata Consultancy Services, TCS.
Oh, okay.
Which is one of the biggest IT companies in India.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, and just in the first 9 months of this fiscal year, TCS is expected to give Tata Sons almost 25,000 crore rupees in dividends.
Wow.
So it's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And it really shows you the power of the Tata Group, right?
Yeah, that's fascinating how they're using the profits from one part of their business to invest in another part.
Yeah.
Very strategic.
All right, let's move from business to sport now.
Yeah.
And the IPL.
The IPL.
Which is always exciting.
Yeah, it's huge in India.
Huge.
Right.
And we have news that Axar Patel has been named the captain of the Delhi Capitals.
Okay, I don't follow cricket that closely.
Okay, well, Axar Patel is a very experienced player. He's an all-rounder, which means he's good at both batting and bowling.
Right, so he's a valuable player.
Very valuable. And he's been with the Delhi Capitals since 2019, so he knows the team well.
Okay.
He's also been part of the Indian team that won the T20 World Cup in 2024 and the ICC Champions Trophy in 2025.
Oh, wow. So he's a winner.
He's a winner, and he's got that captaincy experience as well.
Okay.
He led the Gujarat under-19 team to a title And he's also captained in some domestic matches.
All right.
But the IPL is a different beast.
Yeah, it's a big stage.
It's a huge stage.
Lots of pressure.
And Delhi Capitals have never won the IPL.
Oh, really?
So there's a lot of expectation on Axar's shoulders.
So do you think he can do it?
I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But he's definitely got the talent and the experience.
Oh, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about technology now. And this interesting perspective from Narayana Murthy,
Okay.
who is the co-founder of Infosys.
Right, one of the big IT guys.
Yeah, he's a legend in the Indian tech industry.
Huh?
And he's been saying that there's too much hype around AI in India.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he basically thinks that a lot of what's being called AI is actually just traditional programming.
Oh, so it's not real AI.
Exactly. And he's very specific about what he considers to be true AI.
Okay.
You know, he talks about machine learning, deep learning
Yeah.
systems that can actually learn and make decisions independently like a human brain.
So the really advanced stuff.
The really advanced stuff. And he's optimistic about that.
Okay.
He thinks that deep learning neural networks,
Yeah.
this is where the real potential lies.
Yeah.
But he's also worried that all this hype around AI is distracting from the real issues.
Like what?
Well, he's very critical of the government's reliance on freebies and cash transfers.
Okay.
He thinks that the focus should be on creating jobs.
Right, providing opportunities.
Exactly. And he points out that, you know, there are currently about 80 crore people in India receiving government cash transfers.
It's a huge number.
It's a huge number. And he's basically saying, this is not sustainable.
Right.
We need to create an economy where people have real jobs and can support themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Coming from someone who's so involved in the tech industry.
Right.
It's not just about the technology itself.
Exactly.
It's about how it's used and how it impacts society.
Yeah. And he's really calling for a more holistic approach
Right.
to economic development.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to a really positive development in science and the environment.
Okay.
India has developed its first homegrown aerosol lidar.
Aerosol lidar.
Yeah, so lidar is this technology that uses lasers to measure the properties of the atmosphere.
Okay.
And this particular lidar is designed to measure aerosols.
What are those exactly?
So aerosols are these tiny particles in the air.
Okay.
You know, things like dust, smoke, soot, pollen.
Right.
And they can have a big impact on air quality and climate change.
Oh, so this lidar can help us understand those things better.
Exactly. And the fact that India has developed this technology themselves is a big deal.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, for one thing, it means they don't have to rely on imported technology anymore.
Right, self-reliance.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it also shows that India is really making progress in the field of scientific research and development.
Yeah, that's great.
And this LiDAR was developed by the Instruments Research and Development Establishment in Dehradun.
Okay.
And they've designed it to be compact and cost-effective.
So it can be used more widely.
Yeah, exactly. And get this, it's only the second such system in the world.
Wow, only the second.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, very impressive.
And given that India is the third most polluted country in the world, this technology is going to be really important.
Right, they need it.
They really need it to monitor air quality and understand the effects of climate change.
Yeah, so how is it going to be used?
So the LiDAR is going to be given to the Indian Meteorological Department, the IMD.
Okay.
And they're going to use it to analyze the vertical distribution of aerosols.
Okay.
And that will help them improve their climate models and air quality forecasts.
So it's going to have a real impact.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how India is becoming more self-reliant in these critical areas.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about healthcare now, and a really promising but also really expensive new cancer treatment.
Okay, what's that?
It's called CAR T-cell therapy.
CAR T-cell therapy.
Yeah, it's pretty complex. But basically, it involves taking a patient's own immune cells
Right.
and modifying them in a lab so that they can target and destroy cancer cells.
Wow, so it's like a personalized treatment.
Exactly, and it's been shown to be really effective in treating certain types of cancer.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, but the problem is it's incredibly expensive.
Oh, okay.
Like in the U.S., it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single course of treatment.
Wow, so it's out of reach for most people in India.
Exactly. And that's the big challenge right now.
Right.
How do you make this life-saving treatment affordable and accessible to everyone who needs it?
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
And the article suggests a few things, like investing in developing indigenous CAR T-cell technologies.
Right, so they don't have to import it.
Exactly. And increasing funding for research in this area. And also encouraging public-private partnerships.
So working together to make it happen.
Exactly. And I think this is a really important issue, not just for India,
Yeah.
but for the whole world.
Right.
Because it raises this fundamental question of how do we ensure that these cutting-edge medical innovations
Yeah.
actually benefit everyone?
It shouldn't just be for the wealthy.
Exactly. It should just be for the wealthy. It should be for everyone who needs it. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about the Indian economy.
Okay.
And some interesting comments from Sridhar Vembu,
Namu.
who's the founder of Zoho,
Namu.
which is a software company.
Okay.
And he's been critical of India's over-reliance on the IT sector.
Really?
Yeah, he says that the IT boom has sucked all the oxygen from other important sectors like manufacturing and engineering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he uses this really striking analogy. He says it's like flash floods.
Floods.
All this money flowing into IT has eroded the foundations of other industries.
Because they're not getting the investment.
Exactly. And it's also led to a brain drain.
Right. All the best and brightest are going into IT.
Exactly. And Vembu is saying that this is not sustainable in the long term.
So what does he propose?
He thinks India needs to diversify its economy
Okay.
and invest in other sectors, and he's calling for policies that will encourage this diversification.
So how would that work?
Well, he suggests things like tax breaks for manufacturing companies,
Okay.
investments in infrastructure,
Right.
and training programs to develop skills in other areas.
So kind of leveling the playing field a bit?
Exactly.
Interesting.
And it's interesting because this view seems to be resonating with a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people online are saying, yeah, we put all our eggs in one basket.
Right. And what happens if that basket breaks?
Exactly. And there's also concern about the future. You know, what happens if the IT sector slows down?
Right. Where will the jobs come from?
Exactly. So Vembu's comments are really sparking a debate about the future of the India economy.
I mean, it's a valid point.
Yeah, it's a really important point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some regional politics now.
Okay.
We have two headlines, one from Tamil Nadu and one from Maharashtra.
All right.
So in Tamil Nadu, we have a BJP leader, Tamilisai Soundarajan, who's criticizing the state government's budget.
Okay. What's she saying?
Well, she's calling it failed and empty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She says that the DMK government is more focused on symbolic gestures than on making real improvements.
Like what kind of symbolic gestures?
Well, she points to the new logo that they've created for the budget.
A logo?
Yeah, she thinks it's a waste of time and money.
Okay.
And she also says that the budget doesn't allocate enough funds for women's safety
Okay.
and that they haven't fulfilled their promise of providing subsidized gas cylinders.
Right.
And she's also critical of the lack of progress on things like new buses for public transport.
So it's a lot of criticism.
Yeah, that's a lot of criticism. And she backs it up by citing economic surveys that show a lack of growth in the southern districts of Tamil Nadu
Okay.
under the DMK government. And she contrasts this with the economic growth that's happening in other parts of the country,
Right.
which she attributes to the prime minister's efforts.
Okay, so she's really painting a negative picture of the DMK's performance.
Yeah, she's basically saying that they're all talk and no action.
Okay.
But of course, the state government is hit back.
What are they saying?
Well, the finance minister, Thangam Thanarasu, says that Tamil Nadu's revenue growth is actually a result of the state government's own strategies. And he points out that they've managed to achieve this growth despite declining financial transfers from the central government.
Interesting. So it's a bit of a blame game going on.
Yeah, it's definitely a political battle.
Right.
And each side is trying to control the narrative.
Yeah, makes ourselves look good.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to Maharashtra now, where we have Shiv Sena UBT leader Sanjay Raut
Okay.
making some very strong comments about the BJP-led state government.
What's he saying?
Was he comparing them to Aurangzeb,
Aurangzeb.
who is a Mughal emperor who's not very popular
Okay.
in Hindu nationalist circles.
Right.
And Raut is accusing the BJP of being responsible for all sorts of problems in the state.
Like what?
Well, he talks about farmer suicides, rising unemployment, and the distress faced by women.
Okay.
And he says that Aurangzeb is irrelevant to these contemporary issues,
Right.
and that the BJP should be focusing on solving these problems instead of trying to erase history.
Okay, so what's the context for these comments?
So it all started with Chief Minister Fadnavis calling for the removal of Aurangzeb's tomb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he says that Aurangzeb was a tyrant who persecuted Hindus,
Okay.
and that his tomb should not be allowed to stand.
So it's a very sensitive issue.
Very sensitive. And a lot of people are accusing Fadnavis of trying to rewrite history
Right.
and of using this issue to divide people along religious lines.
And what about Raut's comments?
Well, he's basically saying that the BJP is using Aurangzeb as a distraction
Okay.
from their own failures in government.
Right, they're not addressing the real problems.
Exactly. And he's trying to shift the focus back to these contemporary issues.
So it's a clash of ideologies, really.
Yeah, it's a real battle of ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some more positive international news now.
Okay.
The India-U.S. trade relationship seems to be going from strength to strength.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and it seems like both sides are really keen to deepen the partnership. We have Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal describing his talks with U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai as forward-looking.
Okay.
And he says that India is committed to its India-first approach, but is also open to a comprehensive bilateral trade agreement.
Right.
And they've even set this ambitious target of doubling bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030.
Wow, that's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And they're calling it Mission 500.
Mission 500.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the idea is that this increased trade will boost prosperity in both countries
Yeah, makes sense.
and also strengthen global supply chain resilience.
Right.
Because, at the moment, there's a lot of reliance on China
Yeah.
for manufacturing and things like that.
Right.
And so India and the U.S. are looking to diversify their supply chains.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, and make them more resilient to disruptions.
Makes sense.
Now, of course, there are still some challenges.
Like what?
Well, things like tariff reciprocity and market access.
Right, those are always tricky issues in trade deals.
They are. But it seems like both sides are committed to working through these issues.
Okay.
And U.S. Trade Secretary Gina Raimondo has also been talking about the importance of a broad-based agreement
Okay.
that's built on mutual understanding on cooperation.
Yeah, so it's not just about the economics.
Right,
It's
right.
about the relationship as well.
It's about the big picture.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really important partnership to watch.
Yeah. Why
Wait.
is that?
Well, India and the U.S. are two of the biggest economies in the world.
Right.
And they're both democracies.
Yeah.
And they share a lot of values.
Okay.
So if they can make this trade deal work,
Yeah.
it could have a really positive impact on the global economy.
Right. It could set an example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we have a couple more headlines to get through.
Okay.
One from Kashmir and one from the U.S.
Yep.
So in Kashmir, there have been police raids on bookstores in Srinagar.
Bookstores.
Yeah, and they've seized over 600 books by this Islamic scholar, Syed Abul Alamadudi, who's linked to the banned group Jamaat-e-Islami.
Right.
And this has raised a lot of concerns about censorship.
Yeah, of course.
Booksellers are saying that they're being targeted
Okay.
and that they're afraid to stock certain types of literature.
Right.
Now, the Indian government says that Jamaat-e-Islami is a terrorist organization
Okay.
and that they're promoting separatism and anti-India propaganda.
Right.
But critics say that these raids are part of a broader crackdown on dissent in Kashmir.
Okay.
They point to things like the communication blockades that were imposed after Article 370 was revoked
Right.
and the mass detentions of political leaders and activists.
Yeah. It sounds like a very tense situation.
It is very tense, and it's difficult to know what the truth is.
Right.
The government says one thing,
Yeah.
critics say another thing.
And it's hard to get independent information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what's clear is that there's a lot of fear and uncertainty in Kashmir right now,
Right.
and people are worried about their freedoms.
Hmm.
All right, let's move on to this headline from the U.S.
Okay.
about an Indian scholar at Columbia University
Yeah, okay.
who's been forced to leave the country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her name is Ranjani Srinivasan,
Okay.
and she was a Fulbright scholar researching urban planning.
Okay.
And the Department of Homeland Security revoked her visa.
Why?
Well, they're accusing her of supporting Hamas.
Hamas.
Yeah, which is a Palestinian militant group.
Okay.
And they say that she's been involved in promoting violence and terrorism.
Wow.
Now, Srinivasan denies these allegations.
Okay.
And she says that she's never been involved in any kind of political activity.
Right.
But the DHS hasn't provided any evidence to support their claims.
So it's just an accusation.
Yeah, and it's raised a lot of concerns about academic freedom.
Right, because if you can be deported for your political views,
Exactly.
then that's a real threat to freedom of speech.
And it's also created a lot of anxiety among international students and scholars in the U.S.
Right, because they're worried that they could be next. Yeah. It's a chilling effect.
A chilling effect, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Srinivasan has chosen to self-deport
Okay.
rather than fight the allegations.
Right.
And she says that she's heartbroken to be leaving the U.S.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But she also says that she's worried about her safety
right.
if she stays.
Yeah. It's a difficult situation.
It's a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one last headline to cover,
Okay.
and it's about Wipro,
Wipro.
which is a big Indian IT company.
Okay.
and they're restructuring their global business lines.
Oh, so they're shaking things up.
Yeah, it's the first major restructuring since Srinath Pasalia became CEO last year.
Okay.
And they're saying that they're doing this to better meet the needs of their clients
Okay.
and to leverage emerging technologies like AI.
Right, so they're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Okay.
So some of the key changes include consolidating their cloud data analytics and AI capabilities into a single technology services line.
Okay, so streamlining things.
Yeah, making things more efficient. And they're also making Capco, which is their consulting division,
Yeah.
more independent.
Okay.
And they're moving Designate, which is their design and innovation arm,
Great.
into the technology services group.
Okay.
And they've also created a new business process services unit
Okay.
and appointed a new head of consulting
Okay.
who comes from Accenture Consulting.
Okay. So they're bringing in some outside expertise.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big shakeup.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But it seems like they're doing it to make the company more agile,
Right.
more efficient, and more competitive.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the results are.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite a journey, wasn't
That's
it?
a lot to take in.
A lot of different headlines, a lot of different stories.
Yeah.
But I think it gives us a good overview of what's happening in India right now.
Yeah. A snapshot.